stared at her screen for the third time that morning. The numbers still looked wrong. She rubbed her purple eyes with the back of her hand and tried again. The data was the same. Something was moving in the dead zone. The dead zone was a place where nothing lived. No planets, no ships, no signals. For 300 years it had been empty space that stretched for dozens of light years. Everyone in the Empire knew to stay away from it. Strange things happened there. Ships that went in never came back. But now her sensors were picking up an energy, reading from deep inside that forbidden space. Senior analyst to Commander Eth, she spoke into her communication device. Her voice shook a little. I need you to see something. Commander Eth arrived within minutes. She was a tall woman with silver skin and sharp features. Her military uniform was perfectly clean as always. She looked at the data on screen. What am I looking at? Eth asked. An energy signature from the dead zone, replied. It appeared 2 hours ago. It's moving toward our space at high speed. Eth frowned. Run a diagnostic on your equipment. The sensors must be broken. Had already done that twice. The equipment is working fine, Commander. The signal is real. The commander studied the readings more carefully. Her face went pale as she recognized something. Show me the energy pattern analysis. Brought up another screen. Lines of energy patterns danced across it. They formed a specific shape that made the commander step back. That's impossible, Eth whispered. Run it through the archive database. Check it against historical patterns. His fingers moved quickly over her controls. The computer searched through millions of old records. After a few seconds, it found a match. A red warning appeared on the screen. Warning: pattern matches restricted files. Authorization required for access. Commander Eth placed her hand on the scanner. Her security level was high enough to access most files. But when she tried to open these records, another warning appeared. Access: Imperial High Command authorization required. Both women looked at each other. Files that required high command access were rare. They usually contained information about the Empire's greatest secrets or worst fears. Commander, said quietly, what could be in the dead zone that needs that level of security? Eth was quiet for a long moment. She was old enough to remember stories from her grandmother. Stories about the time before the dead zone existed. Stories about a war that almost destroyed the Empire. Contact the Imperial Archives, she ordered. Tell them we need access to the forbidden historical records, Priority Alpha. While they waited for authorization, the signal kept moving. It was traveling faster than any known ship could fly. The computers calculated it would reach the edge of Imperial space in less than 3 days. An hour later, authorization came through. Commander Eth opened the restricted files. What she saw made her sit down heavily in her chair. The energy pattern was listed as Human Warp Technology Classification, Extinct Threat Level 1. Humans, she breathed. But that's impossible. Humans were destroyed 300 years ago. Had heard of humans in old stories. They were supposed to be a dangerous species that the Empire had fought long ago. The stories said humans were unpredictable and violent. They fought in ways that made no sense to civilized beings. Are you sure they were all destroyed? Asked. Commander Eth read through the old records. The final report says all human worlds were found and eliminated. All their ships were hunted down and destroyed. The species was declared extinct. She scrolled through more files. It says here that human technology was banned from study. All samples were destroyed. Even research into their methods was forbidden. Why? Asked. The commander found the answer in a file marked Battle of Gate Final Analysis. She read it aloud. Human military tactics show complete disregard for accepted rules of warfare. They use primitive weapons in ways that cause massive damage. They sacrifice their own ships to destroy larger enemy forces. Most concerning, They become more dangerous when losing. The file contained video footage from the famous battle. Commander Eth played it on the main screen. They watched as a single human ship faced 50 Imperial warships. The human ship was already damaged and should have surrendered. Instead, it did something unthinkable. It flew straight into the middle of the Imperial fleet and exploded its own power core. The explosion created a chain reaction that destroyed every Imperial ship. The human captain sent this message before the explosion, the commander read. "Tell your empire, we choose how we die." Shivered, they destroyed themselves just to hurt their enemies. According to this, it was normal human behavior in war, Eth replied. They called it a kamikaze attack. The Empire's generals couldn't understand how to fight an enemy that wasn't afraid to die. They watched the energy signature move closer to Imperial space. If this really was a human ship, it meant everything they thought they knew was wrong. Humans weren't extinct. They had been hiding in the dead zone for 3 centuries. "What do we do?" asked. Commander Eth's training took over. She opened a communication channel to the Imperial High Command on the capital world. The transmission would take several hours to reach them, but this couldn't wait. "Imperial High Command, this is Outpost Gamma 7. Priority emergency message. We have detected what appears to be human technology emerging from the dead zone. Repeat, possible human contact detected. Requesting immediate instructions." She paused, then added 3 words that would send shock waves through the Empire's government. "The humans return." After sending the message, both women sat in silence, watching the signal move steadily toward their space. Neither knew what would happen when it arrived, but they both understood that everything was about to change. The Empire had spent 300 years believing they had won their greatest war. Now they might discover that the war had never really ended. In the depths of space, something that should not exist continued its journey toward the Empire's borders. Soon, the galaxy would learn if humanity's reputation for being impossible to kill was really true. Emperor was eating his morning meal when the emergency message arrived. His personal aide, a nervous young male named On, burst into the dining chamber without permission. Such behavior usually meant execution, but the look on On's face stopped the Emperor's anger. "Your Imperial Majesty," On gasped, "we have received a priority emergency transmission from Outpost Gamma 7. The Emperor was a large being with dark green skin and 4 arms. He had ruled the Iran Empire for 50 years. Nothing usually worried him anymore. But when he read the message, his food turned to ash in his mouth. "Impossible," he said. "Humans were destroyed centuries ago." "That is what we all believed, Your Majesty," On replied. "But the outpost reports detecting human energy signatures." Emperor stood up quickly. "Call an emergency session of the High Council immediately and bring me the forbidden archives." Within an hour, the Empire's most important leaders gathered in the Grand Council chamber. The room was circular, with seats arranged in tiers. At the center sat the Emperor's throne, which was carved from a single piece of black stone. Admiral arrived first. He was the Empire's top military commander, responsible for defending 16 star systems. His blue skin was covered in scars from old battles. He had never lost a fight. Next came Minister On, who controlled the Empire's intelligence services. She was small and quiet, but her green eyes missed nothing. She knew more secrets than anyone else in the galaxy. The last to arrive was Ancient Counselor. He was over 400 years old, which was very old even for his species. His skin had turned white with age, but his mind was still sharp. Most importantly, he was one of the few beings still alive who remembered the human wars. "Counselors," Emperor began, "we have a situation that threatens the Empire's security, perhaps its very existence." He played the message from Commander Eth. The words, "the humans return," echoed in the chamber. Admiral's face went pale. Minister On's eyes widened. Ancient Counselor made a sound that might have been fear. The Emperor said, "You were there during the human wars. Tell us what we're facing." The old counselor was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Your Majesty, I was a young officer during those wars. I saw things that still visit my dreams. Humans were not like other species we had fought." He stood slowly, his old bones creaking. Every civilized species in the galaxy follows certain rules. We fight for territory, resources, or political control. We negotiate when losing. We surrender when defeat is certain. We evolved beyond individual conflict long ago. Walk to the center of the chamber. Humans were different. They never evolved past individual thinking. Each human was a separate mind with separate goals. This made them impossible to understand or predict. Admiral interrupted. "Surely our superior numbers and technology were enough." "That is what we thought," replied. "We had bigger ships, better weapons, more soldiers, but humans fought in ways that made no sense to us. They used tactics no civilized being would consider." He gestured to the main screen. "Show them the Battle of Gate." Minister On accessed the archives. Soon, the chamber filled with images from the Empire's most shameful defeat. They watched as 50 Imperial warships surrounded one damaged human vessel. "The human ship was called the Thunder Child," explained. "It had taken heavy damage and should have surrendered. Instead, its captain did something unthinkable." On the screen, the human ship suddenly accelerated toward the Imperial fleet. Its weapons were barely working, but it didn't try to shoot. Instead, it flew directly at the largest Imperial ship. "The humans turned their ship into a weapon," continued. "They overloaded their reactor and used their ship as a bomb. The explosion destroyed their ship, but it also destroyed 6 of our cruisers." Admiral shook his head. "Suicide attacks are wasteful. They lose a ship to destroy one of ours." "That's what we thought too," said sadly. "But we were wrong. Watch what happens next." The explosion from the human ship had damaged several other Imperial vessels. As the Imperial fleet tried to regroup, more human ships appeared. They were smaller and weaker than Imperial ships, but they all used the same tactic. One after another, human ships flew into the Imperial fleet and exploded. Each explosion damaged or destroyed multiple Imperial vessels. By the end of the battle, 50 Imperial ships were destroyed or disabled. Not a single human ship survived, but they had won. "How many humans died?" Emperor asked. "About 3,000, replied. "They killed 30,000 of our people and destroyed an entire fleet. The mathematics of war meant nothing to them." Minister On spoke up. "What made them so willing to die?" Ancient Counselor sat down heavily. "That was the question that terrified our generals. We studied human psychology for years. What we found was worse than we expected." He called up another file. "Humans don't think like us. When most species are losing, they try to minimize their losses. They retreat, negotiate, or surrender. Humans do the opposite. The more they lose, the harder they fight." The screen showed recordings of human military communications. Even translated into Imperial language, the words were chilling. "Remember Earth," one human captain had said before his final attack. "Remember our children." "They called it fighting for something bigger than themselves," explained. "Humans would sacrifice everything to protect their families, their worlds, or their ideas. They didn't fight for territory or resources. They fought for concepts we could barely understand." Admiral looked uncomfortable. "But we destroyed them. The war ended." "Did it?" asked. "We hunted down their ships and bombed their worlds. We declared them extinct. But we never found we never captured their leaders. We simply stopped seeing their ships." Emperor felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you saying they might have survived?" "I'm saying that if humans are truly returning, then everything we believed about winning the war was wrong," replied. If they survived 300 years in the dead zone, they had time to grow stronger. The chamber fell silent. Each member of the High Council understood what this meant. If humans had survived, they would remember every destroyed world, every killed civilian, every broken promise the Empire had made. "What do we do?" Minister On asked. Emperor looked at his advisors. These were the most powerful beings in the Empire, and they all looked scared. "We cannot allow a human ship to reach Imperial space," he declared. "If they have survived this long, they are planning something. Admiral, prepare a fleet. Intercept this ship before it can send a message to other humans." Admiral nodded. "How large a fleet, Your Majesty?" The Emperor thought for a moment. "Take everything we have in the outer systems, 12 heavy cruisers. If this really is a human ship, I want it destroyed completely." As the council members left to prepare, Ancient Counselor remained behind. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, "there is something else you should know about humans." "What?" "They never sent just one ship anywhere. If there is one human vessel in our space, there are others nearby. The question is not whether we can destroy one ship. The question is how many ships are we not seeing?" Emperor felt the weight of his crown more heavily than ever before. The Empire had spent 3 centuries believing they were safe. Now they might discover that their greatest enemy had never really been defeated. In the depths of space, something approached that could destroy everything they had built. Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Conquering Fist. Around him, 11 other heavy cruisers moved in perfect formation. Each ship could destroy a planet by itself. Together, they represented the most powerful fleet the Empire had ever assembled for a single target. "Admiral," called his sensor officer, "we are approaching the intercept coordinates." Nodded. His blue skin was darker than usual, which happened when he was nervous. He had fought in dozens of battles, but this felt different. He was hunting an enemy that should not exist. "All ships report status," he commanded. One by one, the captains of his fleet reported ready. Their weapons were charged, their shields were raised, and their crews were prepared for battle. Had told them they were facing a human ship, but most of his officers had never heard of humans except in old stories. "Contact in 30 seconds, the navigation officer announced. Watched his main screen carefully. According to the sensors, they would find a single ship moving slowly through space. It should be easy to destroy, but Ancient Counselor's warnings echoed in his mind. "Visual contact established," the sensor officer reported. The main screen flickered, then showed the space ahead of them. At first, saw nothing. Then the computer enhanced the image and he saw it. The human ship looked nothing like the vessels in the historical records. Old human ships had been rough and crude, built for function rather than beauty. This ship was different. It was large, about the same size as an Imperial cruiser, but its design was unlike anything had ever seen. Parts of it looked familiar, but other sections seemed to be made from unknown technology. The hull appeared to be patchwork, as if different pieces had been added over time. "That is not what I expected," muttered. "Admiral," his communication officer said, "the alien ship is hailing us." Straightened his uniform, put it on the main screen. The image of space disappeared, replaced by the interior of the human ship. Found himself looking at a human face for the first time in his life. The human was female, with dark hair and brown skin. She wore a simple gray uniform with no obvious rank markings. What struck most were her eyes. They were calm and intelligent, showing no fear despite being surrounded by 12 warships. "I am Admiral of the Oran Imperial Navy," he announced. "You are trespassing in Imperial space. Identify yourself immediately." The human woman smiled slightly. "Good morning, Admiral. I am Captain Sarah of the Independent Systems vessel Endurance. We have been away for a while. The galaxy has changed." Her voice was steady and confident. She spoke as if she were meeting an old friend, not facing a superior enemy force. "You will surrender your ship immediately," demanded. "Any resistance will result in your destruction." Captain's smile widened. "Admiral, I think there has been a misunderstanding. We're not here to fight, we came to talk." Felt his anger rising. How dare this human speak to him as an equal? "You are in no position to negotiate. Surrender now or be destroyed." "Destroyed?" Captain tilted her head slightly. "Admiral, you're assuming this is just one ship." Before could ask what she meant, alarms began sounding throughout his bridge. "Admiral," his sensor officer shouted, "multiple contacts appearing on long-range sensors." "What do you mean appearing?" snapped. "Sir, they just appeared, like they were cloaked but not cloaked. Our sensors show empty space 1 second, then dozens of ships the next." Looked at his tactical display. Red dots were appearing all around his fleet. Each dot represented a ship roughly the size of his cruisers. In seconds, his 12 ships were surrounded by more than 30 human vessels. "How?" he whispered. Captain was still on the communication channel. "Admiral, our stealth technology has improved considerably in the last 300 years. Your sensors are designed to detect energy signatures you recognize. We've learned to mask ourselves." Realized he had made a terrible mistake. The single ship had been bait, drawing his fleet into a trap. But he was still Admiral of the Imperial Navy. He would not be intimidated by humans. "All ships battle formation," he ordered. "Prepare to fire." "Admiral," Captain's voice carried a note of warning, "I strongly advise against that course of action." "You are outnumbered," and replied. "Surrender now and your deaths will be quick." Captain sighed. "Very well, Admiral, you leave me no choice. All human vessels, this is Captain. The Imperial fleet has chosen to engage. Defend yourselves accordingly." Cut the communication channel. "All ships open fire, target the ship called Endurance." 12 Imperial cruisers fired at once. Their weapons were the most powerful in the galaxy, designed to crack the armor of any known ship. The energy beams struck the Endurance directly. When the light faded, expected to see debris. Instead, the human ship floated unchanged. Not only had it survived, but its hull showed no damage at all. "Impossible," breathed. "Our weapons can destroy anything." His sensor officer was studying his instruments frantically. "Admiral, the human ship absorbed our attack completely. The energy didn't bounce off or get stopped by shields. It was absorbed." Captain's face appeared on the screen again. Her expression was no longer friendly. "Admiral," she said coldly, "that was a mistake. We came here to talk, not to fight. But if you insist on violence, you will discover what 300 years of human advancement can accomplish." "You're bluffing," said, but his voice shook. "Am I?" Captain asked. "Tell me, Admiral, what do you know about the dead zone?" Frowned. "It's empty space. Nothing lives there." "Nothing from your part of the galaxy lives there," Captain corrected. "But the galaxy is much larger than your Empire imagines. While you believed us extinct, we were exploring beyond the galactic rim. We found things your people never dreamed existed." On the screen behind Captain, could see other humans working at strange control panels. The technology looked far more advanced than anything in Imperial space. "We discovered that your empire controls less than 1% of inhabited space," Captain continued. "We found civilizations that make your technology look primitive. We made alliances with beings your people have never encountered." "You're lying," said, but he was beginning to doubt himself. "Admiral, look at your long-range sensors. What do you see?" Checked his displays. The readings showed impossible things. Ships that weren't quite ships, energy patterns that followed no known physics, and structures that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. "We brought friends," Captain explained. "The machine intelligences of the void between, the energy beings of the far nebulae, the architects who built the hyperspace networks your empire uses to travel between stars." His hands shook. The Empire's entire civilization depended on hyperspace networks that they had always assumed were natural formations, if humans could control the beings who built them. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. Captain's expression softened slightly. "What we've always wanted, Admiral, to exist in peace. Your empire tried to destroy us 300 years ago. We survived, but we learned. We're not the same species that fought its gate." She leaned forward. "Admiral, you have a choice. You can continue to fight us and discover what weapons we've developed in 3 centuries of survival, or you can return to your emperor with a message." "What message?" "That humanity offers the Oran Empire a choice. Join the galactic community we've discovered, or remain alone in your small corner of space. But the days of imperial expansion are over." Admiral looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at their instruments in horror. The tactical situation was hopeless. They were surrounded by technology they couldn't understand, facing enemies they couldn't hurt. But he was still a soldier of the Empire. "I need time to consider your offer," he said. "Of course," Captain replied. "You have 1 hour to decide. Either withdraw your fleet and carry our message to your emperor, or discover what human warfare has become." The communication ended. Admiral was left alone with the most important decision of his life. Around him, dozens of human ships waited silently. He thought about ancient counselors' warnings. Humans became more dangerous when threatened. If that was true 300 years ago, what had they become after centuries of survival in the most dangerous region of space? Admiral realized he didn't want to find out. Admiral sat in his command chair, staring at the tactical display. 37 human ships surrounded his fleet, and he still couldn't understand how they had appeared so suddenly. His best sensors should have detected them from light years away. "Admiral," his communications officer said nervously, "we have 15 minutes left to make our decision." Knew what he should do. Imperial doctrine was clear. Never surrender, never retreat, never show weakness to an enemy. But the human ship Endurance had absorbed weapons that could crack a moon. That should have been impossible. "Sir," his science officer called out, "I'm reading some very strange energy patterns from the human ships." "Explain," ordered. The science officer's voice shook. "The energy signatures are mixed, sir. Part of each ship reads as human technology, but other parts show patterns I've never seen before. It's like they're using power sources from different species." Before could respond, Captain appeared on his screen again. "Admiral, I can see you're having trouble understanding what you're facing. Perhaps a demonstration would help." "What kind of demonstration?" asked. "Look at your long-range sensors. Focus on the area behind my fleet." Sensor officer adjusted the display. At first, he saw only empty space. Then something began to appear in the distance. It was massive, far larger than any ship had ever seen. "What is that?" he whispered. "That," Captain said, "is a mobile research station built by our allies, the beings you call the architects." The structure was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It seemed to be made of living metal that shifted and flowed like water. Parts of it existed in normal space, but other sections seemed to phase in and out of reality. "The architects built the hyperspace networks your empire uses to travel," Captain explained. "They've been watching your people for thousands of years. They find your species interesting." Admiral felt sick. The Empire's entire transportation system depended on hyperspace networks. If the architects decided to turn them off, the Empire would collapse overnight. "But that's not all we found in the dead zone," Captain continued. Another shape began to materialize near the architect's station. This one was harder to look at directly. It seemed to be made of pure energy, changing color and shape every second. "The energy beings of the far nebulae," Captain said. "They exist as living electricity. They can travel through space at the speed of light and manipulate energy in ways that seem like magic. Watched as the energy being touched one of the human ships. Instantly, the ship's hull began to glow with the same shifting colors. The ship's energy readings increased by a factor of 10. They're powering your weapons, he realized. Among other things, Captain agreed, but our most useful allies are the machine intelligences. A third shape appeared, and instruments went crazy trying to analyze it. The shape was clearly artificial, but it moved like it was alive. It was made of thousands of smaller parts that constantly rearranged themselves. Your empire has always feared artificial intelligence, Captain said. You destroy any machine that becomes too smart. But in the spaces between galaxies, we found entire civilizations of digital consciousness. They've been exploring the universe for millions of years. The machine intelligence flowed like liquid metal over several human ships. Wherever it touched, the ships changed. New weapons appeared, new armor formed, and new sensors extended from their hulls. They're upgrading your ships in real time, said in amazement. The machine intelligences can improve any technology they touch, Captain explained. They've been working with human engineers for 3 centuries. The result is technology that combines human creativity with machine precision. Admiral was beginning to understand how hopeless his situation was. The humans hadn't just survived in the dead zone. They had found the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations and convinced them to become allies. How, he asked, how did you gain their trust? Captain smiled sadly. The same way humans have always gained allies, Admiral. We offered friendship instead of demanding submission. We shared our knowledge instead of hoarding it. We helped them solve problems instead of creating new ones. But humans are violent, protested. You destroyed our fleet at its gate. We were fighting for our survival, Captain replied. Your empire was hunting us across the galaxy, destroying our colonies, killing our children. We fought because we had no choice. She leaned forward. But we learned something important from that war, Admiral. Violence only creates more violence. Revenge only leads to more pain. When we reached the dead zone, we made a decision to become something better. On the screen, could see other humans working on the bridge of the Endurance. They seemed calm and purposeful, not at all like the savage warriors described in imperial histories. The beings we met in deep space had been watching our war, Captain continued. They were curious about humans because we were different from other species. Most civilizations become peaceful by suppressing individual thought. They create hive minds or collective consciousness. That's the civilized way, said. Perhaps, Captain agreed. But humans remained individual while still learning to cooperate. That combination fascinated our new allies. They taught us things about the universe that transformed our understanding of everything. She gestured to someone off-screen, and the display behind her changed. Now could see a map of the galaxy, but it was unlike any map he had ever seen. It showed not just stars and planets, but networks of energy, dimensions folded on themselves, and structures that spanned entire star clusters. Your empire knows about 300 star systems, Captain said. This map shows over 3 million inhabited systems. The galaxy is crowded with life, Admiral. Your empire is like a small village that thinks it rules the world. Stared at the map. If it was real, everything he believed about the empire's power was wrong. Why show me this? He asked. Because humanity wants to offer your empire a place in the larger galactic community, Captain said. Not as conquerors or rulers, but as participants. There's so much to learn, so much to discover. And if we refuse? Captain's expression became serious. Then your empire will remain isolated in its small corner of space. The rest of the galaxy will continue to grow and develop without you. Eventually, you'll become irrelevant. Admiral thought about his options. He could order his fleet to attack, but their weapons were useless against human technology. He could try to escape, but human ships were faster and could apparently appear anywhere they wanted. "What guarantee do we have that humanity won't seek revenge for the old war?" he asked. "None," Captain said honestly. "You'll have to trust us just as we're trusting you not to attack us right now." She paused, then continued. "Admiral, 300 years ago, your empire nearly destroyed humanity. We could have spent centuries planning revenge. Instead, we spent that time learning to build instead of destroy." Captain stood up from her chair. "I'm going to do something that will either convince you of our peaceful intentions or give you the chance to destroy this ship." "What?" "I'm going to lower our shields and power down our weapons. My ship will be completely defensible for 60 seconds. If you want to destroy us, now is your chance." Before could respond, his sensors showed that the Endurance was doing exactly what Captain had promised. Its shields were down, its weapons were offline. One shot from his fleet would destroy it completely. "Sir," his weapons officer said, "all targets locked, awaiting your orders." Admiral stared at the tactical display. With one word, he could eliminate the human captain and probably start a war that would destroy both civilizations. With another word, he could begin a conversation that might change the galaxy forever. He thought about his on the Imperial. What kind of future did he want to leave them? One of endless war or one of endless possibility? "Stand down weapons," he ordered. "All ships return to defensive positions." When the 60 seconds ended, Captain smiled. "Thank you, Admiral. I think your Emperor needs to hear what we've learned about the galaxy." "I agree," he said. "But I warn you, the Emperor will not be easily convinced." "We understand," Captain replied. "Change is never easy, but it's necessary if we want to survive in a universe that's far stranger and more wonderful than any of us imagined." As Admiral prepared to return to Imperial space, he wondered if he was making the biggest mistake of his career, or taking the first step toward a future none of them could predict. Emperor was packing in his private chambers when Admiral returned to the Imperial. The Emperor had been expecting news of a victory, not the grim face of his best military commander requesting an emergency audience. "Admiral," the Emperor said as entered the room, "please tell me you have good news." "Your Majesty," replied, "I bring news that will change everything we thought we knew about the galaxy." The Emperor sat down heavily in his chair. "Show me." Admiral activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. Images appeared of the human fleet, the alien allies, and the massive structures that existed beyond Imperial space. "The humans are not what we expected," began. "They have evolved far beyond the species we fought 3 centuries ago." He showed the Emperor recordings from his encounter with Captain. The Emperor watched silently as the human woman explained humanity's new allies and their place in the larger galactic community. "This is impossible," Emperor said when the recording ended. "Our intelligence services would have detected such massive alien civilizations." "Your Majesty, our intelligence services only monitor the small region of space we consider to be the galaxy," replied. "According to the humans, we control less than 1% of inhabited space." The Emperor stood and walked to the large window that looked out over his capital city. Millions of beings lived in the city below, all believing that the Oran Empire was the greatest power in the universe. "What did these humans want?" he asked. "They offered us a choice, Your Majesty. We can join the galactic community they've discovered, or remain isolated in our current territory." "That sounds like an ultimatum." Admiral shook his head. "It didn't feel like a threat, Your Majesty." Captain seemed genuinely interested in peaceful contact, but she made it clear that the age of imperial expansion is over. Emperor was quiet for several minutes. Finally, he called for an emergency session of the High Council. Within hours, the Empire's leaders gathered once again in the Grand Council chamber. Ancient Counselor looked older than ever as he listened to Admiral's report. When the Admiral finished, the old being spoke in a whisper that somehow filled the chamber. "I told you humans were dangerous when losing," he said, "but I never imagined what they might become when winning." Minister On leaned forward. "How do we verify that what the humans showed us is real? This could be an elaborate deception." Admiral had been expecting this question. "Minister, I brought proof." He activated another holographic display. This one showed sensor readings from his ships during the encounter with the human fleet. "Our instruments detected energy patterns from at least 6 different unknown technologies," he explained. "The human ships were powered by sources our science cannot explain. Their allies manipulated matter and energy in ways that violate our understanding of physics." He showed them the recordings of the Architect Station that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "These beings built the hyperspace networks we use to travel between star systems," continued. "If they decided to shut down those networks, our entire civilization would collapse within months." Emperor felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you saying our entire empire exists at the mercy of these aliens?" "Yes, Your Majesty. And according to the humans, these beings have been watching us for thousands of years. They tolerate our use of their networks, but they don't approve of our expansion policies." Minister On looked skeptical. "Why would powerful aliens care about our expansion?" Admiral displayed the galactic map Captain had shown him. The room fell silent as the council members saw the true scope of inhabited space. "Because we're not expanding into empty territory," explained. "We're expanding into space that belongs to civilizations we've never detected. Some of these civilizations are millions of years old." Ancient Counselor studied the map carefully. "How many inhabited systems are shown here?" "Over 3 million, according to the humans." The old counselor was quiet for a long moment. "Your Majesty, when I was young, I believed the Empire was destined to rule the galaxy. Now I discover we don't even know what the galaxy really is." Emperor looked around the chamber at his advisors. These were the most powerful beings in his empire, and they all looked frightened. "What are our options?" he asked. Admiral answered. "The humans offered to introduce us to their allies. They say there are technologies and knowledge available that could improve life for every being in the Empire. Medical advances that could extend our energy sources that could power our worlds for transportation methods that make hyperspace travel look primitive." In exchange for what? "Joining the galactic community as equals, not conquerors. Sharing our own knowledge and resources. Working together instead of trying to dominate everything we encounter." Minister On frowned. "That would mean the end of imperial expansion. No new colonies, no new resources, no new territories to rule." "Minister," Ancient Counselor said, "what good are new territories if more powerful civilizations can take them away from us whenever they choose?" Emperor walked to the center of the chamber. "Show me the map again." The holographic display reappeared, showing millions of star systems connected by networks of energy and communication. The Emperor studied it for a long time. "Our empire controls 300 systems," he said finally. "This map shows 3 million inhabited systems. Even if we conquered a new world every year for 1,000 years, we would still control less than 1% of civilized space." He turned to face his council. "But if we joined this galactic community, we would have access to knowledge and resources from all 3 million systems." "Your Majesty," Minister On said, "we would no longer be rulers. We would be junior partners in something beyond our control." "We're already junior partners," Emperor replied. "We just didn't know it." Ancient Counselor stood slowly. "Your Majesty, I have lived through the greatest expansion in imperial history. I've seen us conquer dozens of worlds and subjugate countless species. I thought we were becoming masters of the galaxy." He gestured to the holographic map. "Now I see that we were just children playing in a small corner of something vast beyond imagination." The Emperor was quiet for several minutes. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful rather than commanding. "Admiral, you met these humans face to face. What was your impression of their intentions?" "Your Majesty, Captain could have destroyed my entire fleet. Instead, she made herself vulnerable to prove her peaceful intentions. That's not the behavior of someone planning conquest." "But can we trust them?" Admiral thought about his encounter with the human captain. "Your Majesty, the humans have spent 3 centuries learning to build instead of destroy. They've made allies of the galaxy's oldest civilizations. They've gained access to technology and knowledge beyond our imagination. If they wanted to destroy us, they wouldn't need to deceive us first." Emperor made his decision. "Admiral, send a message to the human fleet. Tell Captain that the Oran Empire accepts her offer. We want to learn about this galactic community." Minister On looked shocked. "Your Majesty, are you certain this will change everything?" "Everything is already changed," the Emperor replied. "We can either adapt to the new reality or be left behind by it." Ancient Counselor smiled for the first time in years. "Your Majesty, I believe you have just made the decision in imperial history." As the council session ended, Emperor remained in the chamber, looking at the holographic map. For 300 years, the Empire had believed itself to be the greatest power in the galaxy. Now they were about to discover what the galaxy truly contained. It was terrifying and exciting at the same time. Outside the palace, the people of the Imperial went about their daily lives, unaware that their understanding of the universe was about to change forever. Soon, they would learn that they were part of something much larger and more wonderful than they had ever imagined. The age of imperial conquest was over. The age of galactic cooperation was about to begin. In the depths of space, Captain Sarah received the Emperor's message and smiled. Humanity had learned that the universe was too vast and strange for any one species to face alone. Now, perhaps, the Oran Empire would learn the same lesson. The galaxy was big enough for everyone, if they were willing to work together.